You know, when our coalition's exploration drones first stumbled upon the Sol system, nobody really expected much. From the initial scans, it looked pretty dull, honestly. Most of the planets were just empty rocks or giant balls of gas, floating lifelessly through space. Same old story we'd seen 1,000 times before. But there was one exception. The third planet from the star. That one caught our attention. Our probes picked up something unexpected. Life. And not just microscopic life or the occasional weird plant. No. This place was full of life. Over the next few days, our probe orbited that third planet, Earth, the locals call it, trying to get a better look. It wasn't easy. The planet's orbit was completely littered with space debris. Chunks of broken satellites, failed rockets, all kinds of junk just floating around, making the place look like a cosmic scrapyard. Still, through the mess, the probe managed to gather intel. There were oceans of liquid water, more than most habitable planets we'd seen. And floating on those oceans were these stagnant patches of debris, similar to the junk floating in orbit. But what really caught our attention was the presence of a sapient species. Humans. Our scans estimated about 8 billion of them crawling all over the planet's surface. Cities, vehicles, scattered structures. It all pointed to a civilization trying, really trying, to reach for the stars. Except, they weren't doing a very good job. Sure, they had rockets and space agencies and big dreams, but based on the sheer amount of failed equipment cluttering their atmosphere? Yeah, most of their attempts at leaving Earth ended in disaster. Our scientists figured it'd take them at least another 400 years to crack the code on reliable space travel. And FTL? Faster than light travel? Forget it. At this pace, they might never figure that out on their own. We'd never seen a species so slow to advance beyond their planet. Most races that reach the early stages of space exploration make it their top priority to break free of their homeworld's gravitational leash. But the humans? They were different. Stumbling, fumbling, but oddly determined. Then, a few years later, things got complicated. 2 member species of our coalition went to war. The Zansi, aggressive and powerful, and the Donic, much newer, much more peaceful. Everyone knew the Donic were the victims here, but stepping in meant challenging the Zansi military juggernaut. Researchers monitoring the probe's footage watched, stunned, as humans and Donic built new cities in weeks, using enormous machines that printed entire structures from raw materials. Old Donic freighters? Converted into mining ships, harvesting resources from the asteroid belt. Even more shocking, humans had reverse-engineered nearly all Donic technology within months. Particle shields, FTL drives, things that should have taken decades to understand. They just cracked them. Vehicles that once had wheels or treads now floated, equipped with anti-gravity nodes. New ships, designed by humans, but borrowing Donic tech, started appearing in orbit. And these ships? Faster, more efficient than anything the Donic ever built. It was unprecedented. Across the coalition, building a new starship typically took months. Outfitting it with an FTL drive? Even longer. Those were expensive, rare, and complicated to produce. Only wealthy traders, large military carriers, or battleships could afford them. Most smaller ships, cruisers, frigates, relied on slower, traditional engines. But Earth? In this once-ignored system? Ships were being built in a week. Launched, equipped with FTL, and vanishing into the void. Our leaders were nervous and curious. The Zansi generals? They were furious. They wanted to seize whatever tech made humans so efficient. The Senate caved to the pressure, granting the Zanzi permission to launch a strike force, take back what they believed was rightfully theirs. 100 warships, carriers, destroyers, battleships, frigates, and even one of their planet-killer dreadnoughts. Thousands of fighters, hundreds of troop transports ready to conquer Earth. It should have been a massacre. One planet, barely a year into its new technological awakening, facing the might of the Zanzi war machine. Most species would surrender immediately. The Donic did after just 2 days of fighting, but not the humans. They had other plans. The Zanzi fleet arrived in the Sol system, regrouping near its largest gas giant, Jupiter. From there, they would stage their attack. What they didn't expect was resistance. As the Zanzi forces moved in, a small fleet of human ships formed near Earth. Just a dozen cruisers at first, nothing impressive compared to the Zanzi armada. But then, more ships appeared, and more. As the Zanzi fleet approached the asteroid belt, the human fleet kept growing, until it matched the Zanzi ship for ship. That's when the humans made their move. They didn't wait for Earth to be attacked. They pushed forward, intercepting the Zanzi on Mars, the red planet, right in the middle of the system. When the two forces clashed, no one could believe what they were seeing. The Zanzi expected a slaughter, a one-sided fight. But these human ships? They weren't the clunky, outdated vessels of a species barely figuring out spaceflight. Number the cruisers, destroyers, and battleships fielded by Earth were advanced, faster, stronger, better shielded than anyone thought possible. Somehow, in under a year, the humans had gone from struggling to leave orbit to standing toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful militaries in the galaxy. The battle raged. The Zanzi fleet, 100 ships strong, was reduced by half. Their flagship dreadnought, the pride of their military, barely holding formation as human ships hammered their defenses. On the human side, losses, sure, but their resolve? Unshaken. 60 human cruisers and destroyers remained, pushing the advantage. The Zanzi generals, realizing they were outmatched, finally gave the order to retreat. The dreadnought turned, followed by what remained of the fleet, ready to jump back to friendly territory. But they weren't fast enough. 3 massive human carriers, orbiting near Mars, launched a surprise wave of troop transports. Nearly 500 small, fast craft, each locked onto a specific Zanzi ship, breaching their hulls before anyone could react. And then, they were gone. Jumped to hyperspace, taking human marines deep behind enemy lines. The remaining human fleet hovered near Mars, waiting, watching. But the Zanzi were gone, fled, defeated. It was unprecedented. Never before had a Zanzi fleet, a full battle group, been forced to retreat. No other species, no other military, had ever pushed them back in open combat, except humans. The Zanzi leadership was furious. Outrage rippled across their empire. 4 million soldiers, half their fleet, gone or captured. The generals demanded answers, punishments. The flag admiral, in charge of the operation, was to be stripped of rank, maybe even executed. But there was a problem. No one could reach the flagship dreadnought. Communications silent. Sensors showed no activity. At first, they assumed it had been destroyed in the chaos. But that wasn't the case. The Zanzi began mobilizing everything they had. Their remaining 4 full fleets, combined into one overwhelming force, set course for the Sol system. They weren't just going to fight. They were going to erase humanity from existence. But when they arrived, expecting resistance, what they found left them speechless. Hovering in space, right where the retreating fleet should have been, was their own flagship dreadnought, intact, operational, surrounded by carriers and battleships, Zanzi ships, but different. All 4 massive planet-killer cannons aboard the dreadnought were charged, fully powered and aimed directly at the incoming Zanzi reinforcements. It didn't make sense. Standard protocol forbids keeping dreadnought cannons charged unless preparing to fire. Otherwise, the ship's power systems become unstable, shields fail, cooling systems collapse. But somehow, this dreadnought wasn't struggling. It was the aftermath? It sent shockwaves through the entire galaxy. No one, and I mean no one, had ever stood up to the Zanzi like that, let alone flipped the table entirely and turned the Zanzi's most prized weapons against them. The galaxy had always known the Zanzi as unstoppable, the hammer of the coalition, their fleets, undefeated, their dreadnoughts, top of the line, their soldiers, ruthless. But now, they were just another empire forced to kneel before a species barely 400 days into their spacefaring journey. It was hard to process. 1 year ago, humans were fumbling with rockets, failing to break free of their atmosphere, their planet surrounded by their own wreckage. And now they commanded fleets that outmatched the mightiest military power in known space. The Zanzi were humiliated, their leaders outraged, their generals wanted blood, demanding retaliation, revenge, some way to reclaim their lost power. But they couldn't. The treaty signed with the Terran Union stripped them of their technological edge. Their dreadnoughts, now hovering over their homeworld under human control, served as a constant reminder of their defeat. Their once proud military, reduced to a shadow of its former self, could no longer enforce their will across the galaxy. And the coalition? Well, they weren't going to intervene. For years, the Zanzi had used fear to get their way, to manipulate smaller species, to bully their neighbors into submission. Now, with the humans rising, the balance of power shifted. Other races, once too scared to resist, began rallying behind the Terran Union. Old rivalries resurfaced. The political landscape fractured. And through it all, the humans only grew stronger. They didn't stop at salvaging Donic technology. They pushed beyond it, innovating, improving. In under 2 years, they mastered anti-gravity systems, perfected FTL drives, and began constructing warships that made even the Zanzi dreadnoughts look outdated. Their shipyards operated at a speed no one could comprehend. Entire fleets materialized in weeks, not years.